So today I'm just going to show you a very easy and quick way to clean a chicken that's just been pulled out of the depulker. This is the way that I've done it for the last 3 years, but it's the best way to do it if you want to keep all the contaminants away from the meat. So you don't have to worry about any of the stool or anything actually coming in contact if you do this properly. I'll first go through with one and kind of show you what I'm doing, and then I'll just do another one in real time so you can just kind of see it. And hopefully this is helpful if you are learning to process your own birds. So I'll go ahead and grab that first chicken. Plop it on the table there. Well, this one already, look, we got a head start here. So the first thing you're going to do is take off the chicken feet. Now you'll see that there's a joint here. You want to find where that joint connects. So where it bends, that's where you'll take it off. So this one's already started for us, so we'll just go ahead and make the cuts there. And you don't really want to saw when you're doing all this as much as possible so that you don't cut the bone and get little shards in there. But yeah, you just pull off the foot and do the same thing with the other side. So just kind of, it'll start to come apart if you're cutting at the proper spot. Then you're going to turn the bird around, and we're going to take out the crop as well as the trachea, and sometimes the esophagus will start to come out with this, but you just kind of make that initial cut right at the top of the breast, and you're just going to kind of pull it apart. So the skin is really easily, you can pull it really easily, and right away you should be able to see the trachea, which is the long tube that has kind of ridges on it, and you just want to separate that with your hands, and I try to choke up on it as much as possible and pinch it off and pull it out. The rest of it should come out when we take out the innards, and then just set that in your gut bucket, and then I pull out the neck and completely detach it from all the rest of that skin there, and then just kind of tuck that on the side for the first little bit here. We're going to take out the crop. So this, if you have fed your chickens, will be holding maybe some food. If they've been pecking at the ground, it will have some grass in it. If they've been drinking water, it could be full. This one's pretty flattened. Sometimes they're poofed up with liquid. So this one, it is attached a little bit. So what we're going to do is we're going to make a little cut. And we're using this is just actually a fish fillet knife. A fillet knife or a boning knife of any sort is going to be best for these because it actually moves along the meat with you. So what I like to do is grab the crop, and we're not cutting it off at this point. We're just separating it, and we're just kind of like sliding our knife down alongside of it. We're just separating it from the fatty tissue and the chicken breast right there. So you can see we kind of just separate it enough to where we get the bottom of it. And you can be pretty rough with this. I haven't really busted this open. And we're just going to pull it up with our fingers and create a hole there. Now, some people will pull it completely off, but I like to actually leave it attached at the tip here. It helps me get a better hold of it. And just like the trachea, I kind of choke up on it as much as possible because we are going to cut it. And if there's grass and stuff in there, it can start to come back out. So I really pinch it with my thumb and my finger here, and we're going to cut that off. So I come in with the knife on the side closest to the neck. I'm pinching as hard as I can here, and I'm just going to cut that off while still pinching. And then while I'm still holding it, literally just take the knife, and I'm going to remove the rest of the neck skin. Kind of weird doing it in this angle. And just kind of remove the rest of the neck skin while I'm still pinching it closed. So that left that. This is in my hand here, and anything that was in that should still be in my hand. Now sometimes, like I said here, you'll see the trachea or the esophagus openings here, and sometimes you'll see grass sticking out of it, or if they were given food, which these have not been fed food in over 24 hours at this point. So there's nothing besides grass and water in there. Sometimes you'll see that sticking out, no problem. That should come out the other side when we pull it out, and you're going to want to blast it with water anyways from your hose. So now we're going to remove the neck. Depending on how you're processing or bagging this, some people actually like to leave the necks. I don't. I think it's gross. So I take my knife And you gotta be careful. Your chicken breasts are right here. You really don't want to cut into those. So we're just going to make a couple little slits on one side. I guess I don't really need to set that down. And then turn it over a little bit and do the same thing on the other side. And then I'll show you here. Just give it a little bit of a snap. Sometimes you need to get a little bit more so that you break it. And that's going to make it much easier to take off without sawing at it. So we're really just kind of going back and forth a little bit, and we'll take the neck right off there. See? And then again, you should always have a gut bucket. Stick that in your gut bucket. Or again, whatever you're going to do with the neck. So sometimes, depending on how long your bird's been, I guess, how long he's been sitting in your bucket, yeah, waiting, hanging out for this process. Sometimes these can be kind of stiff, and I just sometimes will push them back a little bit because I really want to open up this area without putting too much pressure around, like in here. Again, if they have any water or grass or food in their system, if you put pressure in here, or if that's full, their vents right here. I mean, you're going to push any kind of liquid or fluid out of there. So I do this as gentle as possible, especially if there's something in there. This one's pretty deflated, so I'm not worried about it here. So you're going to grab the skin just below this bone here at the end of the breast. So what would this be called? I don't know what that bone is, but you're just going to grab the skin there, and you're going to make just a little slit right at the bottom of that bone. And sometimes, so you'll get through the skin, and there's a little bit of soft tissue in there, connective tissue. You want to just make a tiny little slit at the top of that too. Can't see from this angle here. All right. So, and that's going to let us into the cavity. So you just want a little slit, enough to be able to get in there. And then this skin is pretty, I mean, you can really pull this. So we're literally just going to grab and pull apart here. And again, if this has anything in it, you're not going to want to put too much pressure there. So you might want to pull on the sides. And this really gets us into the cavity. Now this, a lot of people are going to think this kind of stuff is gross, but I find it kind of fascinating. So right at the top here, you're going to have some connective tissue. We've noticed that some birds have a lot more connective tissue than others. These ones have not been too bad. It's pretty easy. So I like to take one of my hands, depending on if you're right or left-handed. This is my left hand, and I come all the way back up at where the neck was, and I put my hands in the cavity as far as I can. I literally like find the hole, and I'm going to scrape with my other hand. I'm going to kind of like remove the connective tissue around the insides up against this chest plate here. And I'm going to go all the way until my hands touch inside. And then continue to just use your hand, holding with this side and removing just the connective tissue. You're just separating the tissues from the innards at this point. So now we have, this is all exposed. You can probably see my hand in there. Can you see my fingers in there? Yep. Okay. So I'm going all the way up to the top of where I can reach my hand. And I'm going to try to grab all of this in one swoop. And you might have to grab a couple things. But what you really want to try to do is grab it all in one go. And then you can get, there's the lungs are still in here. I'll show you that in just a moment. But what you're really trying to do with all this, you can pull on most of this pretty hard and it's going to be fine. The only thing you don't want to do is this little green spot here. That's the gallbladder. If you puncture that or pierce it of any sort or pull on it too hard, it will make a huge green, disgusting mess, and that totally can contaminate things. So you want to be really careful with that. If you do happen to break that, just spray everything off really quickly and move on. I've done I've really only done that like once or twice. So it hasn't really been a big issue. I've been pretty careful. So yeah, you can pull it all out just like that. And I just kind of let it all sit at the end because we're going to detach this fully with the backside here. What's that? The tail feathers. The tail side. There's another word for it too. But yeah, with the tail feathers there, and that's going to fully remove the digestive organs, and we don't have to worry about any of that touching our meat. So if you see here, like this bright red pink spot here, that's the remaining of like the lungs. I would have thought that the lungs are bigger, but they're not. But these get embedded into the ribs. Yeah, the rib cage there. And so you kind of have to scrape them out. There are special tools for that. I've always just used my hands, but you kind of just go in between the rib cage a little bit and peel it out. They feel kind of strange, and sometimes they'll come out in pieces, but the chickens like them. We'll just make them real happy real quick. Yes. So those chickens are so silly. They have been so excited about everything I've been tossing them today. So, okay, now we're going to turn our bird a little bit. We still have these hanging out. And like I said, we're going to cut around the tail feathers. So we're going to use the edge of the tail feather as our guide. And what we're going to do is cut right up here. So we're going to start up at the top and just cut the skin. And at this point, again, I'm not sawing. I'm picking up and moving along. But you're going to just go all the way down through that fat. You can see the fat there. And all the way down. And see how I'm behind it now. I'm behind all the organs here. So then we're going to turn it around, and that's ready to go. So we're going to turn it all the way around. However the angle works for you. This is just what works for me. I come at the bird from a different angle from here. And again, the same thing. My knife is actually, maybe should have been sharpened for this, but we've already done, how many birds at this point?
Coming up on 20.
20 birds for the day, so I really should sharpen my knife. You really want a sharp knife for this. So you just kind of come down, and again, you're just going to hold the tail feather now with the rest of whatever's hanging out here, and you're really just kind of cutting back to where that other cut was, around all this organ, the rest of these organs where they attach here. And coming through the spine, you can kind of hear it starting to separate. Sometimes you can come back around this way if you need to, depending on how deep your cut was. And you should be able to just get that right off there. So there's all the gross stuff. Well, some people like to keep that, but... And then there's a completely cleaned out bird. Now I'll just blast this down with the hose, and this is ready to go into our cold cooler and be ready for partying in a couple days. So if you want to keep any of this, we just give this stuff to our chickens. We just give it to them raw. I'll put it in the bucket below for now. But this is the heart. And then we keep the liver. Now, again, the liver is connected to that gallbladder. So some people are really comfortable cutting really close to it. I'm just not. I just don't like to mess with that. So I cut kind of far away. And these are like super squishy. So they kind of fall apart in your hands. But the chickens love them. And I'm sure they're great protein. So that's all liver right there. Left a little bit on there. There's the gizzard. Some people keep that. And yeah, all the intestines there. So there's the basics of that. I have two different buckets under here. One is for chicken fun stuff treats. The other is our gut bucket that will be buried.